She got it for Christmas. I try to wear it. Yeah. People think I'm protection. I'm just like, no. Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, this meeting is called to order, please. Could you please take your seats and let us begin our program. I want to begin by acknowledging the permanent representative of Equatorial Guinea, Ambassador Antonio Endang Muba. I want to also recognize my distinguished colleague, the permanent observer of the Pan-African Association of Water and Sanitation for Africa, Pan-African Association. That is the distinguished Dr. Navid Kapoor. And one of our other quiet but distinguished scientist behind this initiative, President Dr. Alan Sessoms, and Managing Partner of Higher Education Innovation, who sits on my left right here. Ladies and gentlemen, the list of preeminent scholars, scientists that will address you today is very significant. I am honored to welcome everyone to this pioneering discussion of the impact of technology and climate change and the SDGs initiatives. In this forum, we will explore teamwork to reduce greenhouse gases, the accumulation of greenhouse gases, to advance current productive efforts, the impact of the accelerating climate change and its damaging impact on agriculture, desertification, sea level rise, and extreme weather in advancing sustainable inclusion for water and sanitation in Africa and beyond. Today we want to register an urgent call for collective action. The need for advancing together toward water security and safely managed sanitation is crucial. Our discussion today is about possible coming together, looking at the possibility of a global technology development effort to stimulate significant private-public partnership that will ignite an open global solar sailing competition in space. The concept is pioneering. It is an initiative to harness lessons learned from earlier successful methods of competition. Now, this forward-looking initiative will ignite peaceful competition, building international efforts with universal values as expressed in the 2030 Agenda. Today, I am reminded of the words of a great African, Nelson Mandela, who said, and I quote, "It always seems impossible until it's done." End of quote. That is why I am pleased to applaud the lead taken by the UN mission of Equatorial Guinea and the Pan-African Intergovernmental Agency for Water and Sanitation for the vision to team up with Higher Education Innovation Group, Hi-Fi Health Initiative, and Earth Cup Solar Sail Regatta. Ladies and gentlemen, this diplomatic initiative served as a valuable input to the high-level political forum as it is being unveiled on the Central United Nations platform for follow-up and review of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Therefore, this forum is grounded in the spirit of building competitive intergovernmental efforts to reach its advanced goals. So, in closing, today, I call on governmental inputs from ECOSOC functional commissions and other intergovernmental bodies and forums. I call for input from major groups and other stakeholders, as well as contributors from multi-sectoral partners and vulnerable communities. I call on the sciences and space-based enterprises with interest in our sustainable future, I ask that you get on board now. I thank you as we begin our session. Now, the preeminent group of scientists will speak. And to begin this session, I am very pleased to call on, first of all, our distinguished ambassador from Equatorial Guinea to address us. Dr. Anatolio, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, dear colleagues and friends, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we gather at this important event that focuses on how technological development and environmental policies can align with the Sustainable Development Goals to create a more sustainable and resilient future. Climate change and its effects on sustainable development are among the most pressing challenges of our time. It is a challenge that affects us all, some more than others, and require urgent, effective, and coordinated global action. We have the tool, but we need real will. Words translated into actions, and now more than ever, we must take advantage of the opportunities offered by space technology to capture and mitigate the effect of climate change. Space offers us a unique and global perspective to monitor and understand climate change patterns. Earth observation satellites provide us with accurate, real-time data on global warming, biodiversity loss, and ecosystem degradation. These technological tools are essential for formulating informed and effective policies. However, climate change also poses a challenge for space technology. Global warming is contracting the atmosphere, reducing its ability to climate space debris and increasing the risk of collisions between satellites. This phenomenon could limit our ability to send technology into space, affecting our monitoring and communication capabilities. Therefore, it is crucial that we take measures to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and develop efficient strategies for managing satellites in orbit. To significantly reduce our carbon footprint, we must implement a series of comprehensive strategies from a real and fair energy transition in which funding and equivalent aid are increased for developing countries that wish to carry out such transition, to promoting energy efficiency in all sectors and encouraging sustainable mobility and agriculture. To achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, it is crucial to implement environmental policies that promote sustainable development, ecosystem protection, expand and protect natural and marine areas. Government must work with local communities to implement conservation strategies that benefit both biodiversity and local economies. Natural resource management. Implement natural resource management systems that are sustainable and equitable. This includes managing water, forest, and minerals in ways that minimize environmental impact and maximize benefits for future generations. Innovation and technology. Encourage innovation in green and sustainable technologies. Governments should invest in research and development and create incentives for companies to develop technological solutions that address climate change. Education and awareness. Promote education and awareness about climate change and sustainability. Education is key to empowering people to make informed decisions and adopt sustainable behavior. The fight against climate change requires close collaboration between developed and developing countries. Developed countries have historical and moral responsibility to support developing countries, which are the least polluting in their transition to a sustainable future. This requires the following initiatives. First, technology transfer. Facilitate the transfer of clean and sustainable technologies to developing countries. This includes removing technological barriers and providing training so that these countries can implement and maintain these technologies. Second, green financing. Establish international funds that provide long-term financing for renewable energy and climate change adaptation projects in developing countries. These funds should be accessible and not conditional on neoliberal policies. Third, training and capacity building. Implement training and capacity building programs that empower developing countries to develop their own sustainable solutions. This includes training in environmental management, green technology, and sustainable development policies. Fourth, strategic partnerships. Foster strategic partnerships between governments, the private sector, and non-governmental organizations to promote joint projects that benefit both groups of countries. These partnerships can focus on areas such as research and development, green infrastructure, and natural resource management. Ladies and gentlemen, climate change is a global challenge that requires a global response. By capturing climate change from space, we can obtain the tools and knowledge necessary to implement effective policies and sustainable strategies. Together, we can reduce our carbon footprint, promote sustainable development, and achieve sustainable development goals. Let us remember that the future we want is possible, but only if we act with determination and unity. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. We will now hear from Dr. Nabat Kapoor, who will address us on the accelerating impact of climate change on agriculture, desertification, sea level rise, and the extreme weather advancing in advancing sustainable development. Dr. Kapoor, you have the floor.
Excellencies and esteemed guests, today I want to talk about two critical issues that are intervened and crucial for our planet's future: technology development and climate change. As we strive to achieve the sustainable development goals, it's essential to leverage technology to address the pressing issue of climate change. Climate change is one of the most significant threats to global development, and its impacts are far-reaching. Raising temperatures, sea level rise, and extreme weather events are just a few examples of the devastating consequences of climate change. However, technology can be a game changer in mitigating and adapting to these impacts. Renewable energy technologies such as solar and wind power have become increasingly cost competitive with fossil fuels, making them viable alternatives for energy generation. Electric vehicles are gaining traction, reducing greenhouse gas emissions from transportation. Climate-smart agriculture and precise farming can help farmers to adapt to changing weather patterns and improve crop yields. Moreover, technologies like artificial intelligence, blockchain, and the Internet of Things, IoT, can enhance climate resilience, improve resource efficiency, and support sustainable development. For instance, IoT sensors can monitor climate-related disasters, enabling early warning system and swift response. However, technology development is not alone enough. We need to ensure that these technologies are accessible, affordable, and inclusive for all particularly for vulnerable communities. We must also address the digital divide and bridge the gap between developed and developing countries. To harness the potential of technology for climate action and sustainable development, we need to, number one, invest in research and development of climate-friendly technologies. Number two, scale up deployment of existing technologies. Number three, foster international cooperation and knowledge sharing. 4, ensure inclusive access to technologies for all. By leveraging technology and innovation, my Observer mission believes that we can accelerate progress towards the SDGs, mitigate climate change impacts, utilize science-based solutions for the Pact of Sustainable Development to advance the 2030 agenda and create a more sustainable future for all. In conclusion, technology development and climate change are intricately linked. By harnessing the power of technology, we can address the climate crisis and achieve the sustainable development goals. Let's work together to unlock this potential of technology for sustainable future for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Ambassador Johnson. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are moving on to the voice of the President, ecologist, the Chief Executive Officer of NEA. Now, he is the Executive Director and Connect the Earth Initiative. So we're getting to the core. And for that, I would like to call on Dr. Paul Abolo to address us. Dr. Paul, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Distinguished colleagues, Your Excellencies, esteemed delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor for me to address this gathering of visionaries, practitioners, and global leaders, as we are, who are collectively shaping the future of our planet. We convene here today under a profound and urgent theme, technology development and climate change for the sustainable development goals. It's a rallying call for action, innovation, and inclusivity in an era marked by both unprecedented challenge and extraordinary potential. This session is particularly inspired by the topic, Capping Climate Change from Space, Accelerating Impacts of Climate Change Towards Technology and the SDGs. This framing highlights the intersection of space, technology, climate action, and sustainable development, which is a convergence that has the power to redefine our response to the rate of one of the greatest existential threats of our time, and that is climate change. Let me state clearly that climate change is not a future scenario, it is a today's reality. Our ecosystems are under stress, extreme weather events are intensifying, food and water insecurity is spreading, and development gains are at risk of being reversed. Nowhere is this more evident than in developing nations, particularly in Africa and small island states, where vulnerabilities are deepened by limited resources and institutional fragility. Yet, even in the face of this adversity, we find opportunity. And at the heart of that opportunity is technology. A powerful equalizer, a bridge between knowledge and action, and a catalyst for achieving the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Today, we speak of capping climate change from space. You will agree with me that that phrase is no longer a metaphor. It is a practical imperative. Through satellite-based Earth observations, we now have the ability to monitor deforestation and land degradation in real time, to measure greenhouse gas emissions with increasing accuracy, to track glaciers, sea level rise, and desert encroachment. We have the ability to map vulnerabilities and forecast extreme weather events. This scientific insight, powered by data from above, enables smarter decisions on the ground, especially in sectors like agriculture, urban planning, water resources, and disaster management. But this is not just about technology. It goes beyond that. It's about justice. It's about equity. It's about resilience. About ensuring that the most vulnerable have the tools to protect their future. For example, in Nigeria and many African nations, satellite data is being harnessed to develop early warning systems, guide adaptive farming techniques, and support water harvesting intervention in climate-stressed regions. In this realm, it will permit me to acknowledge the efforts of people like Chief Mrs. Laurel King and Best Love Initiative in fostering inclusion for women in building transition capacity for technologies that support climate change. There's a young lady who is a lawyer that's leveraging her legal practice in driving climate justice and equity in Nigeria, Barrister Rita Opalogo. And I would also like to add, Hope for Now International, under the leadership of Dr. Michael Winsley, is driving climate technology adaptation action for people with disabilities in Nigeria. To truly advance sustainable and inclusive development, access must be democratic. Technology must be available, affordable, and appropriate for diverse communities. We must invest in local capacity, build digital infrastructure, and ensure that women, youth, indigenous people, and marginalized groups are not left behind in the green and digital transitions. They must not be left behind. But none of this will be possible without financing. We need the money. We need to target climate finance mechanisms to support the development, deployment, and scale up transformational technologies. So I recommend we look at tools like the Green Climate Fund, technology mechanisms under the UNFCCC, the carbon markets, and blended finance instruments must be leveraged to drive green innovations at scale. Moreover, I think we should also look at strategic alliances between governments, private sector, research institutions, and local innovators. These are critical for building an ecosystem that sustains tech and innovation. In closing, I would like us to look ahead. The question is not whether we have tools to respond, but whether we have the collective will to act boldly and inclusively. Let us commit to translating satellite data into community-level resilience. It must be brought to a community level. We need to think on how we can transform climate innovations into inclusive business models. The private sector is very critical, and we must explore carbon assets into development finance. And then we need to reimagine science and technology as levers for shared prosperity. ladies and gentlemen, the 2030 agenda is still within reach, but only if we can act with urgency, only if we can innovate, and only if we can act with purpose and collaborate without borders. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, the next session will focus on the overheating world in which we are and limited solutions. In this session, we will hear from three very eminent, I guess, say scientists and physicists. The first physicist would be President Alan Sessoms, who would talk about UN Convention in combating desertification. Dr. Sessoms, you have the floor.
Thank you, Dennis. I'd like to have the people in charge pull it up on the screen, since I don't want to operate it from my... That's it, perfect. I'm going to be speaking primarily about the UN Convention on Combating Desertification. There was an excellent 2024 report, which I think really lays out things particularly well for where we stand and where some of the best minds have suggested we're going to end up if we're not a lot more proactive. Next slide, please. I don't expect anybody to read it because I can't. This just is an indication of where things are going at the moment. We see in the first upper part a map of where we see where the UN, their expert group, has found things getting drier. What we see is deserts in the dark red spot, you can see on the bottom, that are really drying out. The more brownish spots are under stress, and the broad green spots are doing okay. They're not under stress, but things aren't perfect because they never are. That bottom circle, I think we need to focus on a bit more, because that really defines where the future is going to take us. Next slide, please. Water insecurity, as we've heard so many times already, is a major problem. It's causing conflicts already in areas such as the Grand Renaissance Dam, where Ethiopia is having problems with its neighbors. It has problems in the Middle East, as we've already seen. There are problems in Africa. There are problems in the American Southwest. It is one of the biggest, in fact, problems that seems to be cropping up globally, and no one has taken really serious steps to deal with it because of conflicts that are popping up in those areas. In fact, next slide suggests where the real things are happening on the ground. If you take a look, for example, on the left side, you see the water decreasing from Lake Chad over the past 50 years or less. It's rather dramatic, and Lake Chad is one of the more important freshwater sources in Africa. The second looks on the right-hand side, looks at the Aral Sea, and that decrease in water level, it's all fresh water, is dramatic. I think there's nothing short of dramatic that can describe how difficult it's becoming for the people who live in that area, and more broadly. Next slide. We're seeing this already all over the world. It's not just water, it's deserts encroaching on agricultural land. People in these places can't afford to stay because they can't feed their families and they can't provide for their neighbors. The communities are breaking down. So they're leaving. We see it in North America. We see it in Europe in dramatic ways. We see it in Africa. we see it in Asia. There are all sorts of issues that are driving migration, and the only solution we see is somehow stopping the degradation of the land and enhancing agriculture. But this is not something that is high on the agenda. The highest thing on the agenda, as we can see so far in the politics, is stopping people from coming. But then there's no place to go. Next slide, please. This leads to a national security breakdown, and the UN and its blue hats are really stressed because there's no place that they can go that doesn't require the support of the regional governments. And we see that that support is sometimes lacking, not just in Africa, but in Asia, for example. There are real problems there. In South America, we have enormous difficulties. But these things are continuing to happen, according to their reports. Next slide, please. This is an interesting slide. It shows that there's a recipe brewing that in action is leading to international political and economic chaos. Their words, not my words, so I'm remaining just a reporter on this, but there are no steps being taken to deal with this kind of problem, this mass migration, which is becoming worse. The instability that it's generating is forcing, for example, some of the more entrepreneurial people in these areas to go where the money is, and that's usually in drugs. It's very often in illegal mining, and very often it's in insurrection. And so we see that these issues are being driven in a dramatic way by the problems that exist because of water and agricultural land degradation. Next slide, please. Okay, there are management measures. We have heard that there are things that can be done on the ground, and that's absolutely true, and they should be implemented without sort of hesitation. And these are very, very, very local level things. You see that 50% of the world's beef stock are in areas that are drying out. 1 in 3 crops that are cultivated in these areas are also drying. We see the cost of food taking off. One of the problems that we are seeing in the Middle East, for example, is that the lands that these folks are trying to manage simply can't grow anything. So what happens is you're getting lots of attempts by the UN and other agencies to reduce the problems by giving these people land, opportunities to handle the droughts. These are the actions that some people are taking, for example. You need to do something to preserve the water. We find that the degradation of the land through desertification is causing the food that we eat every day to either go higher in prices or disappear completely. This is the problem. Next slide. That's the last one. The chip, I would recommend it. No, go backwards. I would commend this report to everyone who cares about this issue. The United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification is a group that is meeting and carefully thinking through the problem, but they don't get the attention they need. Next slide. This is a report from Nature that I found that was published just last month. It includes an array of significant institutions in the United States focusing on this, including the Federal Reserve Board of San Francisco and Fudan University in China. They are trying to make an estimate. This is all model dependent, but they're trying to make an estimate of what happened between now and 2100 if you have a continuing moderate increase in emissions from terrestrial sources, and there's adaptation taking account of development issues in countries all over the world. There's an assumption that economic development is happening, the poorer countries are getting richer, and they're adapting to climate change. Unfortunately, this is the result that you found. Next slide, please. This is the last one, almost last it shows that no matter what we do, with moderate efforts at development, moderate efforts to reduce greenhouse gases, you're still going to get these areas drying out. From North America, South America, Africa, Asia, it's just everywhere. And that's going to be a problem. The scale is, you can see on the left-hand side, the red side is really bad. The blue side is doing well. You can see how doing well, this is at 2100, is not working. There's not going to be many pieces of dry land left. And my colleague, Alex Hermensky, and I have done some calculations, and this can be slightly optimistic. So it's going to be really bad. The next slide, I think, is useful in that you see the degradation in crops, crucial crops. On the left-hand side, you can't read this because I can't read it, but there's rice and maize, soybean, and other crops. I recommend this paper to you. They're all decreasing in productivity. That means we're going to run out of food, basically. And there's nothing that seems to be going on now that will slow this down. And this is an optimistic assessment. This includes an adaptation. It includes significant economic development throughout the world. This is a problem that probably can only be addressed through the kind of interventions that Dr. Bolo has talked about, through technology and technology advancement. Last slide, please. This is the only thing I'll leave you as a thought. There is a lot to be done between now and 2100. Thank you.
Yes, we're getting into the details. The next presenter, Dr. Alex Savitsky. He will talk about the thermodynamic and statistical analysis of Earth's temperature rise. Alex, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. My first slide, please.
Now put his slide up, please. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to present to you my recent findings on two sources for rising temperature of the Earth. The different sources are human origin, greenhouse gas emissions is one. Another one is natural phenomena, like water evaporation from the oceans or ice melting. The next slide, please. The first one, human origin emissions analysis, is quite simple because it is a known law. Temperature change is caused by energy, so we need radiative power of greenhouse gases multiplied by the time interval. It's just like boiling water. You need both power and energy in time. Stefan Boltzmann, 2 centuries ago, discovered analysis of equilibrium change in temperature when the body is heated. Applied to the Earth, it is 0.3 degrees centigrade per 1 watt per meter square of all Earth's surface of greenhouse gases radiative power density. This change occurs over time, and considerable amount of time necessary because Earth's time constant is very large. Next slide, please. Dr. James Hansen studied the Earth's thermal inertia, and this is the chart we can find in many of his papers, which he started from 2013, this Goddard Institute for Space Studies. So when you apply power like 1 watt per square meter, is 0.3 degrees centigrade. This will be 0.3 degree, but it takes 5,000 years to get there. And it takes 0.2 degrees in 150 years. And the average for the first 2-3 years is only 0.06 degrees. So it is a long-term phenomenon. Next slide, please. To calculate what is existing increase in temperature due to human action, we need now not only time, but we need radiative power of greenhouse gases. In this chart, the red line shows the green power, radiative power of greenhouse gases that I accumulated it for 150 years approximately to match this Dr. Hansen chart. And this is data widely available in NOAA and IPCC in our paper with Dr. Sesson on methane and many others. It starts with 0.8 degrees centigrade in 1880, and it goes up and up and up to 5.5 watts per square meter today. To use Stefan Boltzmann's formula easily, I took the average of this power. Average is not the actual value. So for actual value, I did convolution integral, which is too complex to present you today, and the difference from average value is tiny. Next slide. What is the result? With the average power of greenhouse gas emissions from human origin, it is 2.4 watts per square meter over 140 years, 45 years. And this is a 0.2 degrees Celsius increase per 1 watt per square meter. The result is 0.5 degrees. So all human origin emissions from the pre-industrial time till today increase temperature on the Earth only by 0.5 degrees centigrade. But we measure this temperature increase to 1.6 to 1.7 degrees, 3 times larger. So what is the problem? Next one. The problem is in natural phenomena. And this is a quite old chart, about 15 years old, and the data was known 20 years ago. Charney in the 70s did this analysis too. You see in the left-hand corner it shows that with no feedback, temperature rise on W carbon dioxide is 1.2 degrees C. But on the left upper corner you see first decades is clouds, water vapors, ice melting, and to be therefore, this temperature rise will be between 2 and 4.5 degrees centigrade, so several times larger. And the other longer term effect goes toward even 6 degrees centigrade, 5 times larger. So this is a main contributor to increasing temperature on the Earth. Next slide, please. This is not new knowledge. This natural phenomenon is historically called feedbacks. A century ago, they were feedbacks on human origin radiative forcing. But now, when human origin sources give 0.5 degrees centigrade and natural sources 1 degree C, they became feedbacks on themselves. Human origin emissions is not much increasing, but not a lot. And a good example for water vapors. This is from US EPA website. As water evaporates from the ocean, water is a large greenhouse gas. It creates radiative forcing on the Earth. The increase in water temperature, more water evaporates, and process goes on and on. There is no visible stop inside. Next slide. So those complex phenomena is not possible to evaluate in the thermodynamic way, because there is no science to it. So the only approach to this is statistical analysis. I was lucky to listen to presentation of Dr. Sherwood at Cosmos Club in Washington 5 years ago on statistical analysis of temperature rise using all sources of evidence. Our analysis for the future, our current data, historical and paleoclimate. And this is a chart I derived from his work, which shows probability distribution of climate sensitivity. This is, I will just read for you. On the left axis is probability, on the horizontal axis is temperature rise. So if you apply 3.7 baht per square meter, which is doubling carbon dioxide emissions, let's look at 3.5 degrees sea rise in 150 years, then it will be probability 50%. It means that there is 50% more events in the past when temperature was higher under the same conditions. And here to look at 10% probability of being high, this is like 4.5 degrees centigrade, and smaller ones, like it's 80%, it should be 90%, it should be only 2.4. So we have no definitive answer. It is a question every organization, every person makes for himself. How much risk he is willing to tolerate to activate the project that will decrease temperature, rise on the Earth to certain level. Next slide, please. No, not this one. To do analysis for going forward using statistical analysis, we need, again, radiating power of greenhouse gases. So I used prior curve, which I showed you today, and I extended it to 2100 using the same rate of change as was in the last 20 years. Next slide, please. Now I can calculate what is the effect of increases in greenhouse gases on temperature. I showed to you in 2025 it was 0.5 degree, going back to 1950 is 0.2, and going forward to 2100 is 1.1. In principle, no big deal. Next one, please. Next one, please. And then I combine all natural phenomena with human origin greenhouse gases and show this on this chart with probabilities. So it's again from 1880 to 2100. The gray area is temperature rise due to greenhouse gases under business as usual scenario. The yellow line, top line, shows what will be the temperature increase with 90% probability temperature being high. As you can see, in 2025 it is 1.6 degrees. And it is increasing a little more than from human origin emissions because they feed on themselves. The red area with top red line shows the same thing only for 50% probability. And the last one with 20% probability. What is important is to show effect on us. I show the certification line from my book on the certification of crop plants. And this temperature increase, which is 4 degrees centigrade from pre-industrial time, in 2100 with probability 90%, all crop lands will be desertified. And with 50% probability by 2070, and with 20% probability by 2050. So it requires immediate attention. Next slide, please. So it is natural phenomena, and natural phenomena can be dealt with natural phenomena. If we do with greenhouse gases on Earth, with natural phenomena we can do from space. And this is by reducing the sunlight. It is necessary also to continue reducing carbon emissions, because we will be successful in reducing the temperature rise by natural phenomena from space. And then what will be left? Greenhouse gas emissions created by humans. So we want them to be at that time lower. So this is another 50 or 70 years for green community to reduce carbon emissions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Our next presenter is from our virtual audience, and we in person will now hear from Owen Goodwin.
you will address global geoengineering landscape map. Robin Goodwin, you have the floor.
Thank you, esteemed hosts. I'm confirming that you can both see me and see my slides. Wonderful, I see a thumbs up. Thank you, Alex, Dr. Sifrinsky. I'm going to pick up where Alex left off. Briefly, my name is Morgan. I am the Executive Director of the Planetary Sunshade Foundation. And I have been working on climate change for almost 20 years. I cried when the Copenhagen climate talks fell apart. I worked for years to help bring the Paris climate talks to what at the time we felt was a successful conclusion. And I'm working on space-based sunlight reflection methods because I'm frankly really scared that the other things that we're doing to address climate change are insufficient. In that work, I've had the pleasure to meet a great many people who are also engaged in the sunlight reflection work. And so as part of this talk, I want to give you a brief overview of who some of those other actors are who are looking at ways to address climate change by reflecting more sunlight. This is an IPCC graph, which is really just setting the stage. And Dr. Sifrinsky covered this in great detail. It details the flows of energy that come in and out of the Earth. You'll notice that incoming number, about 340 watts per square meter, and about 100% of that is already reflected by clouds, ice caps, snow, etc. So the problem is, as Alex pointed out, is that the current trajectory that the world is on for climate change is quickly heading towards the catastrophic climate impacts, the political intolerability that we are so worried about. Unfortunately, this red line is very steep, and most of the effort that the UN, that the global climate movement, that most clean tech is focused on, is reducing emissions. And that is critical. I want to be very clear. It is critical that we reduce our emissions as quickly as possible. What I say is unfortunate is that reducing emissions will only get us from this red line down to this orange line. Once those emissions are in the atmosphere, they stay for centuries. And even if we get our emissions down as quickly as possible on our most ambitious Paris climate impacts, that still means those emissions are rising for decades. And so the impact associated with that, which are delayed, will continue rising for decades. Now, the remove part is also very important. Removing emissions is critical. However, removing gigatons of carbon requires huge amounts of infrastructure, massive amounts of energy, massive amounts of land, which is why, and it's important, and it will happen eventually. But in the short term, more and more people, but still a tiny number of people, are looking at reflect. And reflecting sunlight, it can be done in a few ways. Reflecting sunlight from space is the topic of the following presentations that we'll hear. But reflecting sunlight is the third R. It's the third leg of the tripod. And it is, I believe, as a climate activist of many years, I believe reflecting sunlight is the only way the world can remain below intolerable impacts for farmers, for coastlines, for permafrost, for all of those impacts that we have available. There are a variety of ways that are commonly talked about to reflect sunlight. The focus of this meeting is obviously reflecting sunlight from space. However, the most commonly studied in the academic literature and in the policy debate is the stratospheric aerosol injection. We know that would work. We know it's possible. We know it will be global. and it could be a fantastic complement to space-based sunshade. Those are political decisions for people above my pay grade. There is some discussion around cirrus cloud thinning. This is a very unknown one. And then there's actually a fair amount of research into marine cloud brightening, artificially or stimulating marine clouds to be whiter, to reflect more sunlight. And then people also study surface albedo enhancement, things like thickening sea ice, painting roofs white, increasing reflective surfaces. So this is the landscape of people looking to reflect sunlight, also known as solar radiation management, also known as geoengineering. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a landscape of who is doing this work and who is engaged in this. There is a number of established research conferences. I would highlight the Gordon Research as one of the premier gatherings. It's a biannual convening of high-trust researchers, bringing together the observations, models, and impacts of these possible interventions. The people who actually run the climate models organize themselves through a group called the GeoMIP, the Geoengineering Model Intercomparison Project. The UK government has stepped into this field, funding 21 projects, including the organization that I work for, to do research and outdoor experiments into solar sunlight reflection methods. There are 21 projects that are spread across 12 different countries. They're very transparent. I encourage you to check out their website. And the University of Chicago is stepping in, is setting up the largest research program in any university with 10 plus faculty. This is a tiny but growing field. The governance questions here are not insignificant, as you might imagine. There are a number of groups that are starting to put the frameworks in place and the norms and the ethics in place, such as the Alliance for Just Deliberation on Solar Geoengineering, the Degrees Initiative, funds and grants climate scientists from the Global South to study geoengineering and sunlight reflection methods to better participate and represent their countries in what we expect will be an increase in global conversation. Climate Overshoot Commission is made up of former heads of state and former high-level government officials looking at what the world could do if or when we overshoot our Paris climate commitments. And the AGU, the largest global organization of geophysical scientists, has put out an ethical framework for climate intervention. You don't need to remember all of those names and titles, but I would encourage you, if you take down one thing from this talk, to look at srm360.org. Their funding tracker looks at where funding has come from and where it goes to, who is doing work in this field and what kind of work they are doing. The space reflection methods that we'll be talking about here in a bit are part of this landscape. They're a unique part, but they're certainly not the only part of this landscape. Sunlight reflection methods has not been mainstream climate science. However, the unavoidability of climate impacts that we are seeing and that we are terrified of is pushing more and more of us to step into this field. The IPCC is committed to including sunlight reflection methods in its next assessment report, and a lot of the work that myself and many of these organizations are doing is intended to help provide the IPCC with a fair and balanced analysis of what sunlight reflections could do and what options the world might have in the coming years. So as I wrap up here, let me just share a little bit about the work that I lead at the Planetary Sunshade Foundation. As I mentioned, we received funding from the UK's ARIA program, where we are bringing together aerospace engineers and leading climate modelers from around the world to run climate models on what actual engineering interventions could do and what the climate models would say about them, so that the global decision-making bodies, such as the IPCC, a more accurate sense of what these options actually are. Stay tuned for an apples to apples comparison of various ways that space-based sunlight reflection can work. Feasibility assessments, prototype mission recommendations, the Earth system model results, and transparency is incredibly key. Thank you for your attention. Look forward to hearing from the rest of the speakers. Please stay in touch with us, follow our work at planetarysunshade.org, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you very kindly. And we would continue in our virtual access. And our next presenter, a Swedish astronaut, Professor Christer Fuglesang, will address us on sunshades in space as an overview of possible climate mitigation methods. Dr. Fuglesang, you have the floor.
So let's see. Do you see my screen, my slide now?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Good. So
Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet. Do I need to do something?
We see your screen, but we see the WebEx on your screen, not your slide.
Uh-huh. Okay, let's see. It's first time on a WebEx meeting doing this.
Christopher, they have a copy of your slides if you'd like to project it from here.
Yeah, okay, let me do one more. Just try that. Is this correct now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
We see the PowerPoint program, and the slide is fairly small, so it's not full screen.
All right, well, why don't you go it from the other? Make sure I go faster. So, if you can pull up my first slide. So while this is coming, I can start getting a little bit of background. Thank you very much to invite me and let me present at this very distinguished meeting. Something which I've been thinking about and doing some research on for the past 6 years. Was really in summer 2019, I read a bit of how the greenhouse effect works and started to understand a little bit of this and realized that, well, it's about 1% more of the sunlight hitting Earth, which is trapped by the greenhouse gases compared to it used to. So, being a space guy, I think, well, why don't you just then put up some sunshade in space to trade off 1% of the sunlight coming to Earth and we equal this out. So let's see. I still don't see my slides. Can anyone else see them?
No. You might want to try again with 2 years up. I don't know whether.
Okay, let's try again. Because now it's going again very strange. Because just before the meeting we were given the option whether to so let's see now. And I said I would do it myself, but otherwise the leader here said he would do it. So, but you still see it, but is it small?
We see all the controls for PowerPoint, and can you make that full screen?
Say again?
We see all of the editing control panels for PowerPoint. We don't see the full screen slide.
The slides are
I
actually
see
up.
So, but yeah, I mean the guiding charge. Still the same thing.
We will take a 5 to 10 minute break and come back ready to engage with our virtual audience. Please take a break, take some water, and we'll come back ready to serve virtually.